Good morning, and thank you all for joining. All of you, looks really interesting, the panel we have here. In a second, I'll turn it over to Jen Schmitz, the CEO of Lattice Industries. But this is a session called, in our Broadband for All series, Smart Cities and Investing in Cities. And I think we're also going to highlight opportunity zones as a way of thinking about how to bring everybody together. This is one of our big suggestions for the Biden administration, is how do you get everybody together? And one of the ways to do that would be to provide broadband 5G for people all over the country. So Jen, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, and thank you so much for your leadership in this issue.
Well, thank you, Norman, and I thank CGLA for bringing everybody together to have this discussion, because I think it's a discussion that needs to be had. So, so with that, I think we should just first, I'll introduce everybody, and as we go along, you know, feel free to add more. But we are joined today by Habib Shamsku, which is the president of Advanced Mobility Group, Chuck Brindle, who's the executive government advisor for Amazon Web Services, Derek Clyburn-Ballard, he's the CEO and principal of MTech Global, along with Zachary Chavez, who's the CIO of and director of Evolutionary Finance, which is an interesting title. And then also we are joined by Randy Awasaki, who is the executive director of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. And we're here today because we have a conversation going on that we're going to try to enlighten our administration to come with some of our ideas on how to bring broadband to all, which I think in this COVID-19 situation we've all realized is a necessity. Additionally, we're behind our competitors in China and halfway around the world as far as rolling out this 5G. And also in the terms of smart cities, we have problems. You know, this is great, but there seems to be a lack of financing and money to pay for all these nice things that everybody wants and needs. So hopefully today we can just go start with a roundtable. I got a few questions, and we can get your perspectives on how this actually works and some of the ideas that you guys have seen, some of the problems you have encountered, and some of the solutions that perhaps we can work together across industry to kind of focus on. So with that, I think we should start off with really taking advantage of looking at this opportunity that lies in front of us. Today we're here with Norman and his folks from CGLA talking about ideally what will be a digital New Deal. And that's a monstrous effort that has to go across country to roll out and keep us competitive in the high-speed broadband realm, which will eventually connect everything that we're used to today. And that includes some of the autonomous driving systems and the energy efficient microgrids that you guys are focused on. So with that, I'd like to introduce Habib, who has also been working with Randy over in California on Momentum Station and some things like that. And we have just as a background, where do you guys see the role of transportation and digital infrastructure in the 5G rollout being important to the rollout across the nation, and even the arterial and ancillary cities that are going to require this broadband connectivity? Mainly, what do you think the biggest obstacles are? Is probably that you've encountered would be probably a starting point, Habib.
Yeah, would be happy to address that. I believe that we are already in the cusp of digital infrastructure and the 5G or so. To me, the question is not 5G is happening or it's not happening. It's about the issue of the lagging behind or being at the forefront of it moving forward. Think about it, that it took us about 35 years from 1956 to 1990 to build the physical infrastructure interstate highway system with the leadership of the Eisenhower. If it wasn't that kind of the leadership, we still would have had the highway system, but it would have been maybe take it a little bit longer to do it. It took IBM about 30 years to become the IBM of what we know. For Microsoft, it took about less than 10 years. And for Facebook, it took about only 14 months. So that's how fast we are moving. So I have no doubt that the next 10, 15 years is going to be marked as the era of the digital infrastructure. We still have to work our way around the physical infrastructure as well with the state of the repairs. So we built the most beautiful highway system in the world, but we inherited two major diseases. One is the congestion, the other one is state of the repairs or so. And in last 20 years that we created the ITS, other speakers this morning, we haven't been able to tackle the issue of the congestion. But the digital infrastructure and the opportunity that the COVID is presenting to us, it will change that. The COVID brought some good thing associated with that. One is that this very meeting that we are conducting right now, if it wasn't COVID, definitely were in Washington, D.C. and had the face-to-face meeting. So imagine how many trips has been saved because of the Zoom call. And not all the Zoom calls are going to stay post-COVID, but most of it, I think it will, and it will going to help with the congestion management as we move forward. And the smart city and the digital infrastructure is the way to go. But what we need really is a few things. We need the leadership. The leadership, it just matter, and we need to have a plan, and we need to have the funding. So if I have to recommend something to Biden administration, I would tell them that they build 10 major regional data exchange in the country to start with, at the $2.5 billion a piece, and then move forward to 100 major metropolitan area and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So speaking of having a plan, and I think we've all learned this through our experience, that these are very different industries that we all work in. For instance, Derek and Zach are coming from energy. You guys are coming from transportation. I'm coming from construction and development of urban centers, right? We've seen on our side that there's been a lack of understanding on how to pay for all this in this infrastructure. Randy, you've helped create Momentum Station, which happens to be an autonomous testing area. I think it's the largest in the nation. We have a handout here, and we were going to talk a little bit about this, but one of the things that I was very shocked when you told me, and Chuck, this is where you'll probably come in, is that not only we have congestion and we want to have all this data and we want to transmit all these things that will help us in this new world, there's going to be a lot of data. So Randy, you had brought up that there's going to be 10 gigs coming off of every car every hour as we progress down this autonomous driving system, scenario. Where exactly are we going to be able to put all that? And exactly how are the cities going to be able to utilize some of that information? And then thirdly, how does it get paid for? This networking, the storage, in these cities, because the citizens, the budgets aren't there anymore, especially in this year, trying to keep up with COVID. So just going back on that, I mean, Randy, from your experience, what could public management and the ownership and open platforms and transportation benefit if we were to work together as both public and private industry?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Jen, for inviting me to speak today. So we just finished an interview with Autonomous Stuff for a speech I gave the other day for Google Greece. And they were talking about data. The self-driving vehicles are going to generate about 20 terabytes of data in hours because of the real high definition mapping. And so that's a lot of data that's generated on an hourly basis. And so how you're going to store, how you're going to access that data is going to be a combination of hardwire and wireless. And so the safety messages that need to be transmitted car to car will be wireless. And the more long-term data that we need for information on pavement condition and things like that will be analyzed back in the owner-operators' offices. So you have more time. But I think the focus that we talk about is congestion, but I think the greatest promise with the wireless connectivity of the future is reducing the injuries and fatalities in America, in the world for that matter. And I think there's a lot of societal impact that can be gained on the positive side with the reduction of of collisions, crashes, and accidents and things like that. And so many years ago, I worked with, when I worked for Caltrans under Governor Davis, we had a partnership with the wireless industry laying fiber down the interstate system in California. And so if you think in terms of you want to make that last mile connection, how do you do that? Well, you don't want to deal with 97 property owners. You want to deal with one. And so that was a great partnership to make those connections to help expand broadband throughout California, the wireless. And so we also worked on a public-private partnership basis with airspace leases. And so Caltrans had a lot of excess property, and as long as it was operating right away that the department was using, and there was space in a corner, they would put cell towers. And so if you think about 5G and the expansion of the 5G technology, you're going to need more small cells. And typically, cities depend on how progressive they are. They either welcome you with open arms or they push you away. And so somehow we've got to figure out how to overcome those issues and be more strategic, as Habib was saying, and have a good plan to present to this next administration.
So working with you and Chuck, you had up, maybe if you get a little background on what you do with AWS and the government, and then how you tie into this 5G / transportation / energy / everything else that the world's going to have and we need right now. Where does AWS come into play? And from there, could a private industry management or system, the talent and all these things actually work within the government, or how do you see it best working?
Well, thanks, Jen. And first off, I appreciate the opportunity. My background, I previously left CIO at the Commonwealth of Kentucky, where we were working with opportunity zones, and certainly in the transportation space and the challenges that we have there. And coming on board with AWS, and now with the opportunity to help across the country with, challenges, especially with COVID, but moving forward with, the new administration change and with the direction that quite frankly, will somewhat change. We look at 5G as an opportunity. We believe in this idea of connectivity. We believe so much. We've introduced a technology called AWS Wavelength, which allows an infrastructure offering at the edge optimized. So similar to what Randy's talking about with small cell and towers, we now are pushing to the edge infrastructure deployments that embed compute, embed storage, and allow communication service providers and data centers at the edge of that 5G network, so that traffic is really staying local on that edge. We're doing, allowing the compute to occur, application servers out there at the edge, and then really pushing back to storage, longer term storage for analytics, with analytical tools, those things that we need. So we're looking at this as an opportunity to push down and push out, that infrastructure out to the edge that will support the 5G networks.
Yep. Okay, so bringing that all kind of together with the more important thing, because with all this 5G and all this broadband, there's one thing that is going to need to power it, and that's called electricity, right? And so with that, Derek and Zach, but maybe Derek can give kind of a background on where you guys have looked at smart design from a total perspective, because you've had to, right? So energy has typically had to look at other industries. They gather a lot of data. Most times they don't do much with it, right? Or cities that generate all this data, and most times they don't do much with it. And in fact, by holding on to that data, sometimes one would argue that there's a vulnerability aspect. And they've talked in some of the sessions previously, even, I hate to say it, in this last week where we've seen that their hacking is going on. How do these smart cities, invest in themselves? What do we see? Do we have a gateway that attaches to arterial networks? And how do we actually pay for all this has been one of those questions, Derek. And I know we've talked about opportunity zones, and why don't you just kind of bring it in and where your grids come into play with the smart cities and with transportation and mobility. And then maybe we can move on to Zach and we can kind of highlight some of the ideas that we had talked about.
Yeah, Thank you, Jen. I think that most of the opportunity is found in the cracks. The gaps of where things are not necessarily jiving. We talk about creating connective tissue in order to have that be a value set that people can invest in. And between all of these things, we see healthcare actually as being the connective tissue, because one of the problems that we have is with non-emergent transportation, right?
Yep.
That's a big problem for insurance companies. It's a big problem for hospitals. There's just not enough, especially with COVID at this point. If we marry that particular problem with telemedicine, and another thing that's interesting about the opportunity zones in transportation is that a lot of the opportunity zones are located where railway is going through, because the railway, unfortunately, it causes a sort of disconnect and things start to fall off and those neighborhoods start to fall down. So using those particular networks, the railway networks, and setting up multiple ping points, there are many, many companies that have either a type of a reinsurance program or a program where they are using savings as their way of putting in no cost light poles and things like that to the municipality. That's one particular instance. When we're talking about 5G, there is the area of CBRS, which allows, neighbors and neighborhoods to also capitalize on the fiber that's coming through. And as a stopgap, wireless. We can start to push out wireless networks, again, 5G, start to empower those communities to actually take part. When we're looking at telemedicine, healthcare, empower communities, now we're back to the centralized data center and also an edge data center, right?
Yep.
If we can start to, like in your work, understanding data and power as a type of currency, so to speak, we can start to, I believe it's really important for this administration to start to understand fiber and data centers as a utility.
Yeah, and actually price them as such.
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah, point blank, a utility. And if not, then that could be a private concern. But if we are leveraging what we all need in the country almost immediately is increased healthcare. We're leveraging some of the biggest money in our country in order to get the networks built.
Right. Well, and I brought up, because I work with first responders, and this kind of ties it as well together, is, I mean, imagine the advantages on both the healthcare side, the transportation side, and actually just the recipient of that healthcare, if all of the communications down the line, like your doctor knows, has already talked to the ambulance EMT driver that's coming to the house, already prepared with a background on the patient so they can give them the most effective immediate care that may actually save their life, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
None of those systems are connected. And actually all of them are so paranoid about being connected to somebody because they're afraid of the liability. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's where it all is driven. Data is great to share, except nobody wants to take the responsibility for it, And I think it's a role with the administration to create a system that actually allows there is a protective shield, shall we say, where our open markets are actually the best things that protect our financial industry, where the members themselves play a unique role in devising their own policy that works for them in a particular region or in a particular industry. In this case, like with Habib and Randy and Chuck in California, it's actually transportation. So one of the things that we have talked about to be able to not only help cities and regions afford this is to become, part of a public-private partnership where this data can be shared, exchanged, and then the system itself is actually what monetizes. And it actually is the system that is actually brought to the people as a utility. Digital infrastructure is a utility. Our lives do not work if we are not connected. Ask any 15-year-old, right? They can't live without their phone, right?
Right.
So it's changing the mindset of what utilities are. And in fact, that's changing the mindset of urbanization. So urbanization is a connected community. It doesn't mean geographically.
Right.
However, when gathering the data, it's arguably the citizens' data, right? Which gets us into the arguments of where does Google play in Facebook. But information, even from Facebook or Google, if it can be commodified, which means bring it down to something of value that is valuable to every industry, then that can actually start the foundation. And we can't really get to that part until we have the infrastructure. So the paying for that infrastructure is a good idea, and we shouldn't start from scratch because we have these opportunities around the country going on, and these, autonomous testing sites are very well wired and they're up for this challenge. And they also need those data centers that were just described by you guys, right? So one of the ways, and if we can just quickly pop up the map, and that would be for Trinity to pop up for us. Okay, so this is a map I was able to put together, and interestingly enough, it is put out by OMB, the Office of Management and Business from the federal government. That divides our country into 10 different regions. Okay, I have a background from the payments networks, I have a background in commodity trading, and I have a background in global business. And in global business, to create a global network, you actually need to have a plan. So one of the plans that we've been discussing is actually taking this logistically and making sure that we have regional hubs for information. Ideally, those being ones that could also organize open platforms for the region so that they can mutualize their expenses, and additionally offer an opportunity for industry to come in and play, perhaps using the same infrastructure to share data amongst themselves, of which can also help subsidize the infrastructure. Now, what's interesting is I plotted out this map. I also plotted out the 10 red dots that you can see there, which are actually where they have autonomous testing zones, okay? And Zach, we'll bring you in here. We were just talking about this earlier. One of those testing zones happens to be an Air Force base right inside Albuquerque, and it's right across the street from an opportunity zone. So let me ask you this, and then there are all these areas. I did ironically find that there's opportunity zones very close to each one of these testing stations, which could in fact offer financial opportunity for those who are interested in investing in some of these data centers and some of this platform technology that we can put together that'll help build out this system, and the system could be connected. First you develop the region and then you interconnect the region, similar to the interstate highway system that Eisenhower built. But to do that, can you explain where you see opportunity zones playing a role that actually could help this system?
Yeah, absolutely. So with opportunity zones, sometimes I feel like we have to wind the clocks back a little bit and set ourselves up with the program was fundamentally brought forward to do, and that was to provide economic stimulus to blighted areas of the country in exchange for long-term investment. And when you think about that, that actual mission versus where opportunity zones are as a program today, there's an interesting dichotomy that exists within the program in terms of obstacles. And the first is on the finance side, you have these really clunky rules about timing and when to invest and when you can churn investments and how long you have to hold your capital. On the development side, you have all of these rules about what the actual development must look and feel like throughout the entirety of the investment. As you start to introduce infrastructure into that conversation, you start to overcome a lot of the really large obstacles that opportunity zones bring to investors. The 10-year hold fundamentally fits much better with an infrastructure discussion than it does with any other kind of capitalization effort or project, because infrastructure is not something that is a flash in the pan, right? We want this to be around, especially the new, next 100 years of infrastructure is something that's exactly what we're aiming for, is the next 100 years. So when we think about pulling off and dislodging some of the capital that opportunity zones attracts, we're trying to find projects that first and foremost overcome a lot of those just simple obstacles in the opportunity zone space, and how can we add layers of alternative investment diversification that allow these institutions to sort of see this new digital infrastructure and new digital deal as investments that they've normally made in the past. So you're almost trying to trick institutional capital into seeing what it's used to seeing. And by doing that, you tap into a capital pool that we knew to be about $2 to $6 trillion deep when this opportunity zone program came out, which is around the same time that we received our D+ infrastructure rating from the American Society of Civil Engineers. So it was a really nice marriage in terms of timing, as far as this capital pool that all of a sudden became available to us, and then this need for long-term development of certain areas. When you think about the cost of all of this stuff, Derek and I have this conversation a lot. There's really two different ways to approach smart city development. You can retrofit any of these efforts in a city that's already built, but that's very costly because there's existing infrastructure that you either have to work around, dig out, or get through. Or you can go to a greenfield area where we are, and you can start from scratch. And what these greenfield opportunities represent is a nice use case for us to put in front of institutions, municipalities, and high net worth investors in the opportunity zone space, and really make an investment case out of utilities. Whereas people are not used to understanding how roads, water, sewer, and electricity can be an investable commodity. When you're talking about digital infrastructure, that's all it is. It's all an investable commodity. Layering data and the capturing of that data on top of that provides a monetization effort that we haven't really seen in a long time. There's certain opportunities for making money within the digital infrastructure space that I think that only someone who works in alternative investments could appreciate, because there are so many derivatives to the infrastructure itself. So that's kind of how we see it. It's really, from our perspective, a fundamental issue about how you fit the appropriate type of investment with this particular program. And we think that opportunity zones, if you apply them to your, right down the middle of the plate real estate projects, you're going to get to a point a lot sooner than you might like, where you find that opportunity zones don't fit very, very well with those. You can make it work, but it's a chore. When you think about infrastructure, it's a no-brainer. This is the type of capital that you want to play in the opportunity zone space. And then the last thing I'll say is that the reason I think that opportunity zones are very important in terms of infrastructure is that infrastructure represents an investment that I might not necessarily ever sell. And I think that that's kind of powerful if you're capitalizing projects with what we believe is potentially the most attractive tax benefit of all time. I mean, if you look at the tax code right now, where can you avoid capital gains after holding an investment for 10 years? But even more powerful than that, we may have stumbled onto an investment in digital infrastructure that I may never want to sell. And I think that that's kind of interesting, because if you can capitalize all these projects with that monies and then have it just sit there, then you've actually achieved a little bit closer to the, going back to the original tenets of the bill, you've gotten closer to economic stimulus than you originally intended. And I think that's pretty powerful with infrastructure. You don't really have that opportunity with, regular real estate developments or business churning and other things like that, just because the natural order of things it means that you have to make that capital move. But with infrastructure, it's a little different. That capital doesn't always have to move for it to be effective.
Yeah, so bringing together all kind of everything what everyone has said and what everything we're doing here, and back to that tactical plan for what we hope will be a digital New Deal that's actually, between industry, between academia, between the citizens, whose data it really is. And what we're looking at is an administration that's got to jump out of the gate here, where we're behind a little bit, as we've all pointed out, 30% behind China. We put our country in a national security risk. We allow, foreign invaders to hit into our agencies, even at the highest levels of our government, which we have problems with, right? And going forward, it's going to take a very powerful movement of all the people and all the industry and all the agencies across the United States, similar to what we did during, World War II and the Cold War, where Eisenhower came out and he actually built this interstate system that was actually called the Interstate Highway and Defense System, which in my mind, coming from a background of risk management, is actually what you do look at with risk. But again, where there is risk, where there is reward. This is an opportunity, if we do this properly with private investment, that not only, as you just mentioned, you're going to get your money back with some interest, but there's an opportunity here that the actual development itself, whether you're talking about a smart city that has a gateway to a commodity as an exchange, right? Data as a commodity exchange, whether it's the arterial infrastructure that may become a toll road or dynamically change based on, needs in mobility, right? like the transportation systems in California, where their fast lanes actually dynamically change pricing, right? All these things are information that are going to be needed for supply chains, whether they're for delivering retail goods or delivering medical supplies, such as the COVID vaccine. In where we stand today, we need a leadership position, which I don't think any of us see in a government. You know, there's really not one position from an administrative perspective that looks across all industries in a logical and rational way on how to bring all this information together. I mean, just now we're starting to work across departments in the Fed to share information with private companies that actually bring about innovation, right? Things make our world easier, more efficient, and actually pay for itself. And in times where we need jobs like this is an opportunity in these 10 regions to create longstanding jobs. I mean, this digital infrastructure will provide jobs for perpetuity. It always requires reinvestment, you know, and if we do it right, they can become self-sustaining, interoperable, and interconnectable, but that requires people, policy, and coordination. And I mean, I think that one of the things that we've talked about is that in this administration, it would be nice to see someone hold a position that can look across these industries for the betterment of using technology to aid our economy. And that is one of those things I know that I've talked with Norman about, with Derek, with each one of you guys. And then hopefully we can get this message across to the administration on these important things and give them a roadmap, which is hopefully sitting in front of them.
So Jen, I got to jump to another call. I want to summarize in 3 words. Number 1, it should be about job. Number 2, economic development and competitiveness. That's the most important thing. You're talking about China. And then number 2 and 3, it all has got to do about the efficiency. That's what the digital infrastructure will provide you.
Okay. All right, you guys, I think we are at our end. I appreciate all your time. Thank you for joining us. Chuck, Randy, Habib, Derek, and Zach, we appreciate your input, and hopefully we will make something out of this.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.